Are you actually free or are you still in bondage? That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how you can be living in life but still be in bondage to your addiction, even if you're not actively using substance or engaging in that stuff. So when we talk about freedom, we need to define that, and that's really what this is going to draw a picture of. So when I look at this, I look at my life, we're going to talk about the two separate times that I went to inpatient rehab, okay? So we've got the first time and we've got the second time, all right? And there's a couple attitudes that I had, and these are going to tell us what this looks like, okay? So the first time I went, I was there because I was forced to be there, all right? So I was there, that was my mindset. My family was like, hey, you gotta get out of here, you gotta do something, we're not gonna support you, we're not gonna do anything, but if you wanna get help, we'll help you get there. So when I went to rehab, I was basically doing it because I felt like I was being forced. My family was gonna make me be homeless. I had no other choice, there was no other option, and I didn't want to be homeless, right? So I was forced to be there. That was my attitude. So when I was looking at my life and what was going on, I was looking at how I was a victim. I was stuck and I was there because of other things that were making me be there, okay? So then the second one was I wanted all the same minus addiction, okay? So when I thought about what's the goal of being in treatment, the goal was that I would keep everything in my life the same. I just wanted to go back and no longer be an opiate addict. So when I thought about what does life look like, who am I, what does normal look like when I get back, it was everything else is cool, I just don't want this addiction, right? So I was like, hey, I'm ready to go back to my life. I just need coping skills. I need to know how to avoid relapse, right? And then the third one is freedom equals whatever I want, okay? When I thought about what does freedom look like, the way I defined it was being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, right? I wanted to go back to a place where I had no confines and constraints. When I was in the program, I was complaining about the rules and the schedule and all the stuff I had to do because I was forced there. I just wanted to go back and learn how to not be a drug addict, and I just wanted to be able to do whatever I wanted, okay? So overall, I felt like the treatment, the program, all that stuff was a form of bondage. I felt like I was stuck somewhere and I didn't want to be there, and I really wasn't learning that much, and I was always looking at stuff as like it wasn't applicable or it wasn't going to help me and all that stuff. So that relapsed the day I got out, okay? So day I got out of rehab, I got home, I relapsed, went out with some old friends, went and drank. 6 weeks later, I was back on pills, and about 5 months after that, then I went back the second time. So the first thing was when I went back the second time, I was very willing. I remember being like, you know what? I was like, God, if I just do whatever it is you call me to do, I know I won't be back here. That was the literal phrase I said. Called my friend who still worked at the same program, and I went back to the same program. And even my family, some of my family members were like, well, why would you go there if it doesn't work, right? But I went back, and my dad was like, hey, if you believe that's where you need to be, then go there. And I think something he recognized was I was willing. So I was ready to go, I was ready to do it, and he realized my attitude was different. So it's not really about the program, it's about, are you willing or do you feel like you're being forced? Like, is there anything else in the world that's forcing you to be there, or are you doing it because you want to be there, right? If you're always feeling like you're forced and it's everything, you're in bondage. So whenever you're walking around in your daily life and you feel like everything else is your problem and everything else is making you do what you want to do, or they're taking away stuff from you, the people, the circumstances, whatever, you're in bondage. Even if you're not actively using drugs, you're walking around feeling like the world's against you and making you do something that's actually preventing you from being like your true self and like living a fulfilling life. So you feel like you're forced, that's a sign that you're in bondage. The second thing is everything different. Okay, so when I went back, I thought, obviously this didn't work. So I'm just like, whatever it is, I just need to trust whatever it is and just change. First level of compliance, literally just following the schedule. I was like, you know what, man, they got a schedule. I'm supposed to be here at this time and do these activities. Let me just do that, right? That is like such a base level thing, but I was like, you know what, man, like I don't just need to learn how to cope with addiction. I need to like actually live differently. So the first part was, I'm just gonna follow the schedule, okay? I need to think about my health differently. I need to think about my relationships differently. So whenever I started, going back and I was willing to go back, I started to realize like, the more I try to not accept my past, the more power it has over me. So I started just apologizing and confessing to stuff, like for my family members, like wrongs that I'd done to them, lies I told to them. And I started doing that. I started experiencing freedom because I was like, I want everything to be different, man. I don't want to just act like hold the status quo. I want to behave differently, right? So I literally thought, you know what, man? I just need to build a whole new life. If you are trying to hold on to certain things and just mindless addiction, you're in bondage. You're trying to remain enslaved to ways of life that get you back to where you were in your addiction, but you don't even realize it sometimes. Like sometimes you're like, well, I just want to keep this one friend. Like I remember talking to a guy a couple months ago, and he's like, yeah, this guy, like he just comes around every now and then. I just seem to get high with him whenever he comes around. It's because you just can't hang out. Stop hanging out with that guy. Like it's all the same. Like you're just trying to hold on to that, but thinking this time is going to be different, rather than being like, nope, everything different. I can already see the pattern. Like, bro, I just can't hang out with you, man. Everything different, okay? And then freedom equals constraints. You see, this is probably the biggest piece here. A lot of people think freedom is just doing whatever you want. Like if you look it up in the dictionary, it has to do with like being able to do what oneself wants to do whenever one wants to do it, right? But I think the real freedom comes from constraints. So let's take health and fitness, right? You can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, right? You can do that. So freedom of choice. You can do whatever I want. But does that produce physical freedom in the future, or does it produce bondage? My vote is it produces bondage, because if you just do that, you create health issues. You go downhill in your health, and sometimes it's harder to get back to where you are today if you decline than it is to maintain what you have today. So like you go downhill, and then it's harder to get back, and now you have physical limitations. Seems to me like that's bondage. So like actual freedom comes from constraints. It comes from disciplines and boundaries on what you're willing to do or not to do. So if you just walk around thinking, freedom's whatever I want, you can follow that, but it's usually going to give you more of the wrong things, and you're actually going to be in bondage to something in the future. So real freedom comes from choosing your constraints today so that you experience greater freedom tomorrow, okay? For me, when I was in college, I went back to school. I got a 4.0 when I went back, but like, dude, I went to bed at 11 every night. I woke up at 6:30 every morning. I didn't care what anybody else was doing. I didn't go out with people. I didn't party. I didn't do any of that stuff because I was like, none of that lines up with where I'm trying to go now. Okay, I didn't want to just do that and just think I wasn't going to, like, I wanted to live completely different. And so I set up those constraints, and it created a freedom. And here's the funny part. Whenever like exams came around, I never had to stay up all night because I was on top of my stuff. I had done my studying and all that. So like I had a good night's sleep before an exam. Never did I stay up all night. The constraints created freedom, right? And that's just one example of college, but like in my business, in my sales career, in my fitness, all this stuff, like if you choose constraints, you're going to experience greater freedom. But if you're walking around thinking, well, I just want to do whatever I want, I'm tired of all these people compromising me, I'm tired of all these people forcing me to do this stuff, you're in bondage, man. Like you're just walking around in bondage, and you're not going to experience actual freedom, because freedom is not about being able to do what you want. Freedom is about experiencing a fulfilling life, and that involves progress with your health, progress with your career, healthy relationships, just engagement in the world. So if you keep doing all this stuff, you can have it, man, but that's not freedom. None of that stuff is freedom. You're always thinking, your mindset basically here is like, well, once I can do what I want, I'll be good. But when you're over here, you're focusing on growth. You're focusing on how you show up today so that you can actually build a life that delivers to you fulfillment, right? And the funny part is, the fulfilling things in life, it's more about what you give. Like a lot of people are so, I wish I had time to sleep. I wish I didn't have these kids. I wish I didn't have this wife. I wish I didn't have these problems. But actually, the people that I know that are most fulfilled, they're actually like, you know what? I have a good life, and I enjoy these things. And I'm willing to do the work to grow and move forward, because I know that if I keep cultivating these things, I keep putting these inputs in, long term, I'm going to experience a freedom that is not freedom of time or responsibility, but it's freedom in the fact that I get to enjoy a very fulfilling life. So if you want that, this is how you chase that. You're willing to change. You're willing to change everything. And then at the end of the day, you realize you're going to choose constraints. You're going to pick boundaries, because that will lead to the life you're looking for. So thanks for watching, guys. As always, I appreciate it. I'll see you next Wednesday.